All right, let's move past the news and talk a little bit about the actual football. And let's talk about hindsight first, and then we can look to the future. The past season, obviously, not what you want. Is there something that comes to mind for you? Maybe it's one thing, maybe it's a couple of things. If you could go back and do them again differently, is there anything like that for you in your head where you wish you had done something differently this year?
It's probably not that. It's probably not wishing I would have done something different. There was just multiple learning points across the season that you don't know until you go through it, and you don't understand some of the parts of what the job is until you've done it. And I think I kind of equated that at the end of the season press conference when, it's like having kids. It's like you can read all the books and you can talk to all the people that have kids, and everyone's going to give you their share of advice and all their thoughts they have on it, and a lot of it's really good. But until you're in there in the mix, raising kids and changing diapers and waking up all night long, you kind of figure it out as you go on some things, regardless of the amount of advice you have. And that's sort of how I felt about it, where those things that I'm very prepared for, very aware of, and as the season goes along, things come up, and you learn lessons, and you try to be as reflective as you can. You take notes. I got books full of notes that I've taken over the course of the season on things as little as, maybe I shouldn't have left 15 minutes in between meetings and lunch before practice. Maybe we needed 30. It's as small as things like that, and sometimes as big as major decisions that you have to make over the course of the season. And so I wouldn't say I have things that I would have done differently. I just know there's things that I certainly have to do better, and a lot of that is going to be dealing more with the totality of the team. I had team meetings and I deal with everybody and I have conversations, but for me, especially this offseason, I think just being more present and available defensively with those guys, being more involved in their meetings and in their process so they can understand me a little bit better. Because the offensive guys see me every day. I install, I teach, I'm in front of them every day. All the things that you do on offense, I'm a part of, and I run those meetings. And I have my team meetings, right? So I have, a team meeting on Monday, a team meeting on Wednesday, a team meeting on Friday, and a team meeting on Saturday. So I'm up in front and dealing with the team. I'm always having conversations with guys, but I just think for me, being more intentional about my involvement, particularly in the offseason now, with the defensive players and the special teams players and both of those processes, I think is something that I can do a better job of, certainly as we move into the next phase. And I feel so much better about it now because now I know what's coming. I have a better feel. There's not a lot of new now. It's all sort of laid out. I've been through an off season. I've been through a training camp and a regular season. And so I have a better feel for what I can do better and where I can insert myself and do a better job in those areas. So I actually feel way better now than I did a year ago. I've got a very clear vision for what it's supposed to look like and where I can be better, where I can serve better as a head coach. And then I know what I did well. And so those things I can lean into too. And now we've had a whole year with the staff together, right? That's another thing that I think gets overlooked is now we've all been in the battle a bit together. They know what to expect from me. I know what to expect from them. And I know where they can all be better. And so those are all the conversations we have. And we try to improve as best we can and tighten our process and inject new where new is necessary. And sometimes not everything needs to change. You know what I mean? There is things that we did well. There is things that I feel good about as a head coach, things that I liked that we did, things that I feel good about, my strengths as a head coach. So it's a good balance. I mean, there's definitely things that I have to improve on. But I wouldn't ever say it's always challenging to look back on a year and say that I wish I would have done this differently, because it all sort of happens for those reasons that are necessary. You learn a lot because of it. And, but again, to say that there's not things to improve on would certainly be wrong. There's a lot of things that I got to do a better job of.
I think that's totally fair. I understand that. Can I run two things by you that I think are the most common things that fans would want to hear your thoughts on in terms of going back and doing them differently? The first one, relatively inconsequential, but it was just a bugaboo for people throughout the year. Playing Burks as long as you did over NWI and then him eventually emerging. Is that something that you look back on differently?
It's hard because you see a guy like Trey who's got talent. And our job as coaches is to try to get the most out of the talent, and you try to give opportunities to improve. And one of the things that Trey did that was important for him, is that, he came back in phenomenal shape at training camp. He was dialed in. He knew what to do, and again, he's a first round pick, and those guys that are first round picks and have talent, oftentimes are afforded a longer opportunity than others, and that's just the nature of the business in the NFL. That's how it works. You get your picked high, you have your high draft pick, you're invested in, and we're a new staff, and so we were trying to get the best out of the talent that was at hand, and Trey did a good job, and there was things that I probably look at, and could we have gotten Nick involved more often earlier? Yeah, there's certainly things that I think we could have done to involve him earlier, and I told him that at the end of the year, that I wish that I recognized his value quicker. And I think that he has a huge value in terms of what he does in the run game. He can play all three positions. He makes contested catches. He's big. He's strong. Those are things that we could use. And I told him after the season that I wish I would have found a role for him earlier on. And whether that role was big or small, obviously things changed when we traded D-Hop, and then Trey got hurt. So then it was sort of thrust into a position that he wasn't in at the beginning of the year, right? He ends up being our really number two receiver, number two and a half between him and Tyler, depending on what personnel group we're in. And so now he's thrust and he has, triple the opportunities he would have had at the early part of the year. And he answered the bell. He played really well for us, and he became a valuable part of our offense. And he's a guy that you love to have return, and those are things for as the upcoming weeks and free agency begins. But I do think that there was a role for Nick earlier. But again, you're juggling, trying to get to know everybody, trying to get to know how they fit. Having Calvin, having D-Hop, and then you got Trey. So there's three. And so where does the fourth play? And then you had Tyler. So we had some moving parts early on where we're trying to get guys involved. And so I never really got a great feel for what Nick could bring. And the opportunity, because of injury and trade, put him in a spot where now I fully realize what Nick's capable of and what his value is. And so I would say it's probably because it's just we're trying to get to know the team better. And again, you don't really know your football team until you play. All that preseason and training camp and OTAs, you have thoughts and ideas, but you don't know until you play another team for real.
Right.
And so that's what I would say. I would say that there was knowing now if I knew this earlier in the season, could I have found some things to get Nick involved in the process? Yeah, certainly I could have. And he's deserving of it as well.
If you're part of the Tennessee faithful, you know just how many years the Titans have shaved off your life with the emotional roller coaster of sports. Or maybe the roller coaster of life is messing with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals. The new year is a blank space for you to write a new story. BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. They are our incredible sponsor for this video. Regardless, if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools you need to approach your life in a very different way. That's where our sponsor, BetterHelp, comes into play. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. And this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. Easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost if it's not the right fit. BetterHelp's platform makes finding a therapist easier because it's online and remote. BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. Plus, with our link, you get 10% off your first month. Start fresh any day of the year with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/ATOZ sports and get 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp.